Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Watkins Glen. We are here for the first round of the iRacing IndyCar Challenge. We have a special stream here tonight, presented by Powerslide Motorsports. My name is Arjuna, and I'm joined by my three teammates, Brian Carey, Adam Blocker, and Andrew Kinsella. We're here to talk about this first round at Watkins Glen. The track was picked via a fan vote, Watkins Glen winning in the final round over Michigan. And so, with a road course being the first race of this series, we're going to ask each of our commentators who is their favorite this evening. So Brian, why don't you go first?
I'm just going with this here. I think Will Power's probably got a decent chance here. I'm just going to pick him kind of. Yeah, you know what? Let's just go Will, straight up.
I think Sage Karam might actually have an edge just because he has probably the most experience on iRacing out of these guys. So I think he will do well as long as he doesn't have any.
I'm going to go a little off the board since Adam sort of took mine. I'm going to go with Felix Rosenquist. Felix is really, really quick from what I've seen, but at the same time, he does tend to make a little bit more mistakes. So again, if he can get through the race, I think Felix stands a really good chance of winning this.
There are
your Arjuna.
Sorry, go ahead.
What about you, Arjuna?
I think I was going to go with Will Power as well, but or Sage Karam, but I think it's going to be really interesting to also see what Scott McLaughlin has here. A decent amount of iRacing experience, maybe not in your IndyCar, but he does have a little bit of seat time now in the real thing. Maybe he's going to transfer that over here onto the virtual side of things. Something that we just wanted to point out, our own Andrew, he actually helped with the setup for this race, helped coach some of the drivers as well. Andrew, what are some of the things you notice different about how we approach the car, you know, as some of the fastest IndyCar drivers in iRacing versus how these real-life drivers approach it?
I think the most impressive thing is just how much that they charge the corners under braking. You can really tell just how much and how brave they are on the brake and how far they go into the corners. And when making the setup, you really have to account for that. At the beginning, I didn't understand just how deep they were going, and the car was rotating just too much. The back end didn't feel enough, so had to make some adjustments, made the back end settle down a little bit more, and then, yeah, hopefully it'll be a good race, and we'll see some real good action out of this.
We're currently almost 3 minutes into qualifying, and we're riding on board the 29 car of James Hinchcliffe. Of course, didn't have a full-time ride coming into the season, but he'll be happy to get some seat time in this first race of the virtual series. Still waiting for our first time to actually be posted on the board right now, but switch over to the Shell V-powered entry of Scott McLaughlin as he comes across the line. Scott Speed, currently your pole man, a 1:25.591.
Yeah, and I would expect those to drop down into the 124s by the end of this session here.
Andrew, do you think one reason why they maybe charge the corners a lot harder than we do is just like, does it help them in the race where, you know, if they're trying to defend from an opponent, naturally driving to the corner deeper might make it harder for someone to pass?
I think that's definitely part of it. Being brave on the brakes definitely prevents dives up the inside. I think the other part is that it's just setting up the car that way means that inherently the back end is more stable, so small mistakes are less likely to catch them out. And from that perspective, it produces a much more consistent setup if you can get the back end hooked up with the front end really well.
Felix Rosenquist, currently your pole man, a 1:25.446. Some drivers still yet to put in their first lap, but Scott McLaughlin currently struggling a little bit on his second lap. He's sliding the car around. This lap looking a little bit slow, and as I say that, it's already over.
And Marcus Ericsson just spun on his second lap, so his qualifying's done.
Also, Oliver Askew is 1/1000th of a second behind. Oh, looks like Scott Speed is number one, but as you say, he's 1/1000th behind Felix Rosen.
We're going to ride on board with Sage Karam as he comes to the end of his first lap. Sage was your Lionheart race winner at Watkins Glen this Wednesday, a race that all three of us, or all four of us rather, in the booth were a part of. We all know just how quick Sage is in the IndyCar. He's going to hope that he can get to show some of these drivers making their debut in iRacing, some of them, just how quick he is. Sage Cameron in the 24 car goes second.
Identical time to Rosenquist.
Identical times, but I think Sage Cameron, by virtue of putting in the lap second, will be scored second in your qualifying right now.
On my screen there, they came up simultaneously.
There is a hidden digit that iRacing does track the 10,000th. We don't know it, but that is to the 10,000th of a second. Felix is faster right.
So your margins out front, razor thin. Less than a second still separating your top 13 cars right now.
Keeping in mind, too, that was Sage's first lap and Rosenquist's second, so hopefully for Sage, he can put down a few tenths.
Yeah, so far his second lap looks pretty clean, hasn't made any mistakes yet, so I don't know the times, but it looks like he's going pretty...
Notice that Will Power is waiting right for the end in order to put down a scorcher right at the end.
Classic willpower.
So we'll take a look at your weather conditions between your qualifying race sessions, but this is a very cold session, and so I'm not sure if Will Power is really going to gain too much time by waiting and trying to see if the weather cools down. Maybe he's just trying to see what his competitors do. As Sage Karam coming across the line, moves himself up into pole, a 1:25.065.
It's also static weather, so the ambient's not going to change at all. If anything, the tracks might get a little bit slower as the track becomes saturated with.
And Power is coming through the heel of the boot right now.
Right on board with Will Power, his first flying lap right now. Other drivers currently on a hot lap: Grant Rahal, Pato O'Ward, and Zach Beach. Will Power
First lap.
third, just over a tenth behind Sage Karam. Can he close that gap on his second lap now?
Being unbiased with my prediction here, but I am really rooting for a pole position right now.
You can see just how much speed these guys carry through the bus stop. Maximum commitment basically in every part of the track for these drivers. And looks like his second sector might have been purple, but slightly slower in the first sector. He's the only other car on track right now, Pato O'Ward, who's sitting in 18th place. It does not look like anyone else is going to challenge for the pole position as we have less than 2 minutes to go.
He's right to the edge of the track in every corner so far.
He just lost it.
Coming out of the boot. That's a very treacherous corner.
Yeah, probably one of the harder corners in the service, and I don't know what it's like in real life, but it is definitely hard here.
Looks like he just tried to carry a little bit too much entry speed, crossed the bump on turn in, just lost it.
So with that, I believe our grid order will be set. We still have a minute left, but no one else on track, and I don't believe anyone else is going to be able to put a lap down.
Looks like Daly, Ferrucci had both their times validated. Same with Herta. Same with Hinchcliffe. Same with Beach. Yeah. So those guys will be at the back of the grid, sorted by iRating. So, do we know? We should probably talk about strategy.
Before we do that, let's quickly take a look. I'm just trying to pull up a better camera angle right now, but let's take a look at your weather today. Like we mentioned, the ambient is as cold as it can be at 18 degrees Celsius. Your track temp is 41, relatively cool for this type of track. Adam, what are we looking at in terms of fuel window?
According to Andrew, probably knows better. It's either a 15 or 16 lap stint. I think, obviously it's a 45 lap race, so 3 15 lap stints will get you exactly there. But obviously, if you can extend a stint to 16 laps, that'll give you, added benefit of short filling on a further stop down the line. So look for some guys to maybe extend to Sten if they can to try to make up track position.
So with that being said, here's your starting grid for round 1 of the iRacing IndyCar Challenge. Sage Karam, the driver with the most virtual racing experience on iRacing, qualifies pole with a 1:25.065. Chip Ganassi, driver of Felix Rosenquist, is going to start in second. Then you've got Will Power, Scott Speed, Oliver Askew, Alex Palu, Scott McLaughlin, Simon Pagenaud, Joseph Newgarden, and Alexander Rossi will round out your top 10. Moving a little further back in the field, Kyle Kirkwood will line up in 11th next to Graham Rahal. Sebastian Bourdais and Philip Nasser will be on the next row of the grid. Marcus Ericsson, qualifying in 15th compared to his teammate second, will be hoping to hit slightly better race pace. Kyle Kaiser, Dalton Kellett, Pato O'Ward, Jimmy Johnson, and Tony Kanaan will round out the top 20. Your final 5 drivers, none of whom set a lap time for in this qualifying session, will be Santino Ferrucci, Colton Herta, Connor Daly, Zach Veach, and James Hinchcliffe. So Brian, who's your biggest shock in that qualifying session? Who did you expect to be slightly higher in that order?
Just looking down the order here, I'm looking at Marcus Ericsson. It looked like he was going pretty well in practice and didn't seem to put a lap together. So he was a little bit of a surprise for me. But honestly, this is shaping out kind of the way practice has been going, and hopefully the guys at the back can get some. I mean, some of these guys are pretty new to this, so hopefully, they'll find their legs mid-race and start pushing forward. But no, a lot of big surprises.
Also, Colton Herta was pretty quick in practice, but he didn't get any time together for qualifying, so look for him to kind of make his way forward.
Yeah, I think lap 1 is going to be very interesting here. We've got some guys who maybe qualified a little bit farther up than we've seen them practice, and we've got a few guys a little bit further back than we've seen before.
Yeah, actually, guys, the one thing that I do notice is real-life drivers, in my experience, tend to be a lot more aggressive with each other in this sim. But being online and having a connection, there is some inherent internet lag that pushing just as close as you would in real life doesn't always work the way you'd expect. So we'll see how this goes lap 1. Hopefully it works all right. And that is a large pace truck, gentlemen.
A large pace truck for one of the most exciting fields that we've had in iRacing IndyCar history. 25 real-life drivers out here to show exactly what they can do on the virtual service. Brian, you bring up a good point. These drivers aren't going to have to worry about their engines blowing up too much or, brakes overheating. But netcode is a factor, and when you're driving at speeds like these, small margins can be a big factor here.
Yeah, it absolutely can. I'm surprised you brought up the engine blowing up at Watkins, but I mean, that was weeks ago. So, but yeah, I mean, like it's a different mindset going into it. But I mean, I'm looking forward to this get going.
So, 45 lap race. Drivers are going to have to make at least, I think, 3 stops. Might see a little bit of strategy playing out with tires.
I'm going to say the reason they have a pace truck for this race is probably because Chevy told them that they want, some brand representation.
Adam, you're trying to get us in trouble here.
I mean, who doesn't want some good old American steel at that front of the grid for the first IndyCar race this year?
And just a reminder, we do have the official paint pack for this series loaded in the sim. All of these drivers running liveries that replicate their real cars. You even have Scott Speed stepping in for Marco Andretti in that 98 car.
And Kyle Kirkwood is in the place of Ryan Hunter-Reay's DHL 20.
We do have a few guest drivers, as well as Jimmy Johnson and Scott McLaughlin, but the rest of the field, IndyCar regulars. So guys, when was the last... Oh, I just going to ask, when was the last time that IndyCar actually raced at Watkins Glen in real life?
2017.
Yeah, 2017.
And who was your race winner there?
Alexander Rossi. This is his first win, actually, in IndyCar. Or second win, first road course win after the Indy 500 in 2016.
Starting back in 10th, it's going to be tough for him to make his way all the way to the front. You never know.
Let's see if anyone does a Johnny Herbert-like send up the inside into turn one. Hopefully not.
All of these drivers have been committing a serious amount of time to practice, just like the NASCAR drivers have been doing as well. So hopefully they're going to put on a show like we got to see last week at Homestead. They're going to come around, the pace truck slowly pulling away from the field, leaving Sage Karam in control of this green flag start. And away we go. Green, green, green. Sage Karam with a great start, taking the lead comprehensively. We've got more action further back in the field, though.
Nasser and Bourdais very close there. Bourdais losing it. He's just got away from the bottom. Sebastian Bourdais.
One driver already turned around. Zach Beach, I believe, has also crashed. You can see that just in the background. Tony Kanaan also involved in that incident.
Oh, Rossi is backwards. Big pileup going to the bus stop.
Oh, big incident. Marcus Ericsson also involved.
Colton Herta with the front wing damage.
Rossi got turned in a straight line by Kyle Kirkwood, or turned himself.
I hear more action happening. We're going to take a look. You can see the incident happening right there. Alexander Rossi getting turned and then coming across the track to take out Marcus Ericsson in that 59 car. I believe that is
Nazar.
That is Nazar, you're correct.
Tony Kanaan's nursing some damage here. He's coming out of the, looks like the S-bend right now, not looking.
It looks
Meanwhile,
like
Sage Karam is off to a good start. Got a decent lead over Felix Rosenquist. Scott Speed third, and Will Power.
good start for Sage Karam out front, but Sebastian Bourdais, I think, cut the track already down pit lane, missing a front wing, so he's going to have to serve some kind of penalty. Sage Karam already with a 1.2 second lead over Felix Rosenquist, with Scott Speed, the rallycross driver, in third place, 2 seconds behind Sage Karam right now.
So guys, what happened with Tony Kanaan, Zach Beach coming up to the DSs, there was a little bit of net code contact with Pato O'Ward, and that turned Tony Kanaan and Zach Beach was left with nowhere to go.
Also, in fairness to Scott Speed, he was a Formula One driver at one point too, so.
Was indeed, and Adam, Andrew, and myself had the opportunity to give him a little bit of coaching a little earlier in the weekend. We see Scott McLaughlin making a move, or trying to make a move, in the car in front of him.
Oliver Askew just sent it down the inside of Will Power.
Will Power now down 2 positions in 5th, but Scott McLaughlin still pressing hard on the back of Alex Palou right now. As Tony Kanaan is also down in pit lane.
There we go.
Newgarden, or McLaughlin all over the back of Glen.
McLaughlin weaving, trying to find a way past, but Alex Palou, IndyCar rookie, defending hard and not being intimidated by the driver in his rearview mirror right now.
See how much time McLaughlin lost through the last corner there. A lot of aero push, but he's close enough. They should get a decent run into the bus stop. It's not going to be good enough to make it.
Amber in that last corner coming out of the main straight there doesn't really leave being close approaching behind you, but I think Scott will be sooner rather than later.
Power is making a move back on Ask.
Will Power trying to go around the outside of the Colin Hodder in the pits, but Will Power trying to go around the outside of the bus stop, and Oliver Askew not being intimidated and forcing Will Power to lose a significant amount of time bumping over those curves.
Yeah, Kanaan also came into the pits to fix damage.
I think the Power is a little bit faster than Askew, but he can't find a way.
So you're leading 3 cars right now, starting to string out just a little bit, slowly losing the draft from each other. But then from 4th all the way back to 10th, there's a little bit of a group here that's developing. Many cars in close proximity, and hopefully some battles coming. Remember, these drivers will all have 10 push-to-passes to use. Once you lift or brake, you lose that push-to-pass, but that's going to give you a considerable boost of power, especially as you go up the hill here. think now that things have calmed down a little bit, we're going to go back and actually review what happened on lap 1 of this race, because there was a lot of action that I think we missed.
Yeah, so the first thing was Bourdais lost it on his own in the curb in turn 1. That was just a quick self-spin and he got back going pretty quickly. But then 2 major incidents, the big one, the bus stop obviously, but just before that, there was some netcode contact between Pato O'Ward and Tony Kanaan, collecting Zach Beach and possibly another car that I couldn't see there.
And it'd also be good to get an onboard of Kyle Kirkwood going to the bus stop on lap 1.
Oh, that's where Colt Maherta got his front wing damage was with that netcode contact there.
So I think the battle of the race here, guys, is Will Power and Alex Palou right now. They were side by side for the touch off. Wheel to wheel, pretty impressive.
Just taking a look quickly at these onboards from the start, we saw the incident involving Tony Kanaan with some netcode, and now we just see that incident with Kyle Kirkwood, Alexander Rossi kind of darting a little bit across the track there. Unfortunate incident taking out a number of cars on lap 1 as we return live. As we see Will Power still now on the back of Alex Palou, having slipped 1 more place back.
And Alex was...
say that Alex Palou is on a charge here. He is not only asking Will Power, but he's pulling away and pulling up onto the bottom of Oliver Askew right now.
He was the fastest car on the track the last time around by a couple tenths.
Alex Palou, he showed great pace in our practice session right before this. He was the fastest man on track. Currently working his way, and
they're going through the carousel nearly side by side. Palou showing the nose to Askew. Is he going to go for it here? Nope, he stayed behind.
Now between the toe and the heel of the boot is going to be an opportunity for him to get by. There's a heavy braking zone into the heel. He's gone up the inside into the toe. He's got to the inside. He's put him under pressure. Looks like he might get him down into the heel. Let's wait and see.
And this is allowing Power to catch back up, isn't it?
Alex Palou moving to the inside here, and Oliver Askew hanging around the outside, not able to keep the position though. Alex Palou up into 4th.
Sending it up the inside here. What a move from Power.
He learned where the limit was in qualifying, and he came in just under it. Awesome.
It all started, I think, when Oliver Askew hit the curbs a little too much at the bus stop and got sideways. Alex Palou able to get alongside through the carousel, and now able to get past, and Will Power taking advantage as well.
Alex is timed by 6.2 seconds behind the leader. Let's see how that changes coming around the next lap. See if we can run these guys down.
Sage was to 26.1 though, which is pretty strong. Definitely building a gap over
Rosenquist is really staying with them. Like with all of Sage's sim experience, Felix is really keeping it tight. Still only a 1.8 second.
Just about see Felix.
McLaughlin and Askew bus stop.
Big incident, big
that
incident.
Was big. Newgarden's involved too.
You see the damage on Scott McLaughlin's car. He's got both front and rear wing damage. Oliver Askew appears to have some front damage. And Joseph Newgarden actually appears to have taken the most damage there. We're going to go and look at this incident quickly.
And Pagenaud as well. Pagenaud's got both ends of his car destroyed.
He has suspension damage for sure. It looks like Askew just went too deep, got on the grass and the curb, and hit.
3 out of the 4 Penske cars in one incident.
Team Penske now, Will Power, their highest running member, in 5th place. 3 cars taking significant damage. I'm not sure if they're going to get a faster pair here.
They do have 2 faster pairs. 2 faster pairs for this race.
Looks like, ironically, the car with the least amount of damage from that was the car that triggered it. Askew, he just has a little bit of front wing.
More cartage in the background. Sorry, guys. Kyle Kirkwood, I think, just made contact with Joseph Newgarden. I think Kyle Kirkwood now is going to need to use one of his faster pairs. We're going to take a look at this incident as well, because it looks like a bizarre one.
Luckily, he's close to the pits right now.
See him exiting the boot section, and that is a car, I think that's the car of Zach Veach, who just tried to shortcut the track.
No, he just went wide at turn 9.
Okay, that's good. That was an unfortunate incident to see. Kyle Kirkwood, I think, nothing he could really do in that situation. Your leader, Sage Karen, again with a fastest lap last time around at 26.15. Now 2 seconds in front of Felix Rosenquist. So two of the favorites that our broadcasters had picked here currently leading out front, with Will Power, one of the other favorites, sitting back in 5th place.
Surprised that McLaughlin's still going around with a damaged front and rear wing instead of pitting. I mean, surely he has like 8 laps to go until the pit stop. Surely it's going to be faster to add an extra pit stop instead of trudging around with that much.
Well, I think that it's actually it's closer than you think, because at the end of the day, you can probably extend the window maybe to 17 or 18 laps with a little bit of lifting and coasting. So if you can get to that first window, it could save him a bunch of time if he actually stays out there.
We are just starting lap 8, so he's going to need to get to at least lap 12 to make that work, I think.
And even with the damage, he's got decent enough pace to keep the driver Dalton Kellett behind him. Although, I say that he was 2.5 seconds slower than Sage Karam that last time around. He's losing a handful of time every single lap. He's going to need that faster curve sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you can really see it here as Kellett comes up behind him, and he just drives right on by him in a straight line. Top speed of 177 is not going to cut it. So there's a significant amount of damage on that.
So guys, the battle for 4th place is heated up. Will Power is caught right back up to the tail of Alex, and is starting to hurry.
Will Power now less than half a second behind Alex Palou. Alex Palou, an IndyCar rookie, currently running in 4th, a decent amount of sim experience as far as we know. We do see a lot of the younger drivers right now towards the front of the field. The biggest outlier, though, probably Scott Speed. Despite his age, though, he's been involved in the IndyCar community for a while, and no matter what you think of him, he's driving a great race so far to only be 5 seconds behind Sage Karam.
Graham Rahal, I think, also doesn't have that much sim experience. Also one of the older drivers, up 6 positions already. Just kind of avoided all the carnage, running solidly in 6th.
And this is a classic Rahal race, isn't it? Just like his dad would do, he's sort of just stayed out of trouble, had a nice quiet race. He's just putting in laps and he's going to be there at the end.
Graham was pretty aggressive in practice. I noticed a lot of spins during the warm-up, trying to find the limit of that car. Now he's realized what it is, and he's driving smart right now.
And McLaughlin's still staying out with that damaged car. Did a 29 last time around, so roughly 3 seconds off.
The closest battle right now is Santino Ferrucci making the move on Kyle Kaiser. Santino didn't put in a qualifying time, qualified all the way back in 21st, now up 11 positions to put himself up into the top 10. Great race from him so far.
Yeah, looked like Kaiser just gave it to him, knew that Santino was faster at this point, just sort of gave it to him into the book.
Santino, your biggest winner from some of those first lap incidents. 11 places, he's gained at least four or five from people dying in front of him, and he's had to make a few moves. A good race from him so far. Currently sitting 27 seconds behind the leader.
He's pushing pretty hard. He's getting a fair amount of wheel spin off these slow speed corners.
But he's driving smart. He's another guy who's just sort of putting in the laps and trusting that he'll be there at the end. And I think that with this type of racing, he'll get a top 10 easily.
Obviously an IndyCar rookie last year, Santino Ferrucci, and I think a lot of people, including myself, came in with a little bit of negative bias about him, given some of the news stories about his behavior in the F2 series, but I think impressed a lot of people with his attitude and performance last year.
Power just got passed by below, or they went wheel to wheel into the bus stop. Power was forced to cut the bus stop, actually.
So now that cut of the bus stop is sort of put a halt to the battle for a little bit. Let's see if Will Power can actually catch back up to below another bloke. And now that the pressure's off, start putting in laps and start reeling in Scott Speed.
I have to think Will Power's used most of his push pass already. I've seen him get big runs up the back straight many times already. Definitely not conserving his push to pass.
We're only 10 laps into this race, and with 35 laps more, you're going to want to have budgeted your push to passes appropriately as to ensure that you don't run out at the end in case you need them in a battle.
And now Rosenquist, now that he's fallen up far enough behind Sage where he doesn't have any dirty air, is doing the exact same times as Sage.
Felix, in fact, with a 1:26.06, fastest lap of the race, closing in by a few tenths of a second there on the leader, Sage Karam.
I just wanted to say, as the action quiets a little bit on track, just wanted to say how impressed I've been with many of these drivers. Like, yes, we've had a few incidents, but the incidents that we've had have mostly been, as I say this, most of the incidents that we've had were racing incidents and not spinning out. But it looks like Ray Hall did just put it in the tires.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but we were riding live, following Oliver Askew as he was trying to chase down Graham Rahal, and Graham Rahal lighting up the tires on the exit of turn 1 and putting it straight into the tire barrier.
Yeah, so obviously you're allowed to use all that runoff on the outside, but if you hit that transition with too much wheel in it, you just lose, and the car, gets lifted off the ground a little bit, and if the car lands while you still have the wheels pointed in a different direction, it's going to spin. So that's what happened there.
Yeah, we of course don't have the repave here in iRacing. It is the older pavement, and there's significant bumps on the outside of turn 1.
Yeah, it's actually a very good point for these IndyCar drivers who've experienced this track before. The repaving has been done well since this track had been scanned, and I imagine it is a much different experience.
So we also saw Colton Herter having his own issues at turn 1. So two drivers having similar incidents at turn 1, both now in the pit lane.
And I will say that is one of the biggest challenges coming from an IndyCar into a sim is the bumps, because you're so used to feeling it all through your body, and suddenly all you can feel it is in your hands. And yeah, Colton just he did sort of the opposite. He got loose and hooked it into the opposite wall to the ground.
Sage was actually able to pull out a couple tenths on Felix that last lap there, so looks like they're trading very quick laps, still in the low 26s. The boat pulling away slightly from Scott Speed, Alex Palou, and Will Power, their closest rivals behind.
Sage put in another fastest lap at 26.0 this time, so they're trading fastest laps. As we see Kyle Kirkwood getting past Spam McLaren driver of Pato O'Ward.
Does Pato's front wing look a little bit strange to you, or is that just on?
Yes, it's damaged.
Very good observation. Pato O'Ward having some right side front wing damage. He'll need to replace that when he comes into the pit lane in just a few laps. Alex Palou, in fact, your first taker down onto pit lane.
Yeah, I would expect a lot of people to pit now, as Andrew was talking about, to get damage fixed and just extend the later stint.
Scott McLaughlin is still out there, but he has managed to stay only 30 seconds back of the leader, so it looks like the gamble is paying off compared to Simon Pagenaud and Joseph Newgarden, who are almost a minute behind the leader.
Very quick.
I wouldn't be surprised if Pagenaud had suspension damage. He didn't really have a choice but to pit.
Oh, I'm sure he did, but I'm just saying that, like, compared to the other cars involved in that crash, it's paying off for Scott. He's making the best out of the bad situation.
Alex Palou comes out 9th on track. You can see on the track map, the leader just coming around to exit the boot. The pit window between 15 and 16 laps. Alex Palou coming in a few laps early. What's this going to mean for his strategy, Andrew?
Well, it means that he's going to have to go full fuel all the rest of the way. So it'll give him a little bit of extra tire right now. If he felt rear end of the car was going away, it might have been advantageous. Maybe once the track gets a little bit more rubbered in later in the race, he'll be more confident going late on the tires.
Your two leading cars, in fact, your three leading cars still staying out. We saw Sage Karam as he came around the last corner on this last lap, getting very sideways and losing almost 3 tenths on that last lap to Felix Rosenquist. These guys are pushing hard, and
O'Ward has a lot of damage, guys. Not sure what happened there.
He may have had an incident. Let's go and take a look. Pato O'Ward coming through the bus stop, taking a lot of curb. And unfortunately tagged by the driver Kyle, I think that was Kirkwood, unfortunately left with nowhere to go.
Staying out though.
Very surprising call given that they are within the fuel window right now. They could come down onto pit lane, get that damage repaired, get some new tires, full tank of fuel. You actually see
Guys, do you know who's have the cleanest car in the race right now?
Don't tell it.
Jimmy Johnson has just been circulating around there, and he's about to go wheel to wheel with Ward into the bus stop, but he has just been cruising around doing his thing and not getting in anyone's way, which has been a big change from what happened at the NASCAR race.
He was a little off pace in the practice session, Jimmy Johnson, but to his credit, like you said, has not been involved in any instance today. And you actually saw trying to go around the outside of Pato O'Ward through the bus stop, backed out of that move despite having a clean car. Just running a clean, smart race, trying to get to the end here.
Jimmy's lapping about 2 seconds off the leaders right now, but he's keeping it tidy and he's keeping it moving forward. So, I mean, right now sitting in 13th is
Sorry.
Similarly, Dalton Kellett's like 2 seconds off the leader's pace, but he's made up, 11 spots from the start just by avoiding all the...
I'm sorry to interrupt, guys. Alex Palou now back onto pit lane. I'm not exactly sure what's happening here, but he was running as high as 4th, and now 2 pit stops in just a few laps. This is going to put an end to his chance of a good finish here.
I wonder if he miscalculated the fuel, realized it, and is ducking in now.
He did come up. He's on the jack for tires this time. It was a 9-second stop. He was 4.5 in the box last time around. I'm not exactly sure what happened.
Must have forgot tire.
If that's what happens, it's a real shame, but that does mean Will Power, who just put the fastest lap of the race in with a 25.8, using some of those push-to-passes now, being promoted up into 4th position.
He's closing on Scott Speed.
doing a lot longer than Scott Speed too. Scott Speed's in the pits.
I wonder if that was why Power was dropping back, guys. Was he saving fuel to go a lap longer than everyone else here? Try to get the overcut and put down a scorcher on this one.
Currently
across the lane 25.9, so
I believe he's the only driver who's done a few laps now in the 25s, but we're following his Team Penske teammate, Scott McLaughlin, who's now got all of that damage repaired, and he's trying to now put in some good times and recover some of that time that he lost by having all of that damage.
Yeah, it looks like Will Power actually has the fastest lap of the race right now at a 25.8. So Sage and Felix Rosenquist have both gotten into low 26s, high 25.
Santino Ferrucci, still not pitted, but he is up into 5th position, up 16 places from his starting spot. We're talking about Jimmy Johnson running a clean race, but Santino Ferrucci not only running a clean race, making his way forward as well.
Oliver Askew still on track. He's been a little bit less clean compared to Santino, but also going 16 laps, so that'll give him a little bit lighter stops on the backside of this race.
You can see the 3 drivers still on track.
Hours in.
As Will Power dives into the pit lane.
Aggressive entry. Hope he didn't get a penalty there for coming across the cone. I'm not sure where the line is on that, but he was pushing it pretty hard.
No, you don't get a penalty for crossing that line, and he was down to 45 for the cone. So
Well, it was an impressively firm entrance.
But as we see Will Power, Oliver Askew, and Santino Ferrucci all dive for pit lane, Sage Karam will retake the lead of this race. Qualified on the pole position and has been able to control the lead pretty easily. He's now got a 3.6 second lead over Felix Rosenquist. Somehow
Power right ahead of Speed.
Power able to get the overcut in with the longer stop there on Scott Speed. Put in a scorcher of an in-lap and was able to get past Scott Speed. Now the trick is, can he keep it while his tires are coming up?
You could see see just how much Scott Speed closed, having that superior momentum coming out of turn 1.
I'm sure he was on the button too, seeing Power coming out of the pits in front of him when he was behind him before the stop.
Scott Speed got held up a little bit too by Santino Ferrucci at the end of his laps.
Pit strategy coming into effect early in the race here. Will Power able to jump past Scott Speed by virtue of staying out a few laps longer. As Santino Ferrucci is going to leave the pit lane in 10th position, so still a good gain of position so far for Santino as they've completed the first stops of the race. Currently your closest battle on track is this one between Scott Speed and Will Power. Scott Speed qualified fairly well in 4th position in a fairly unusual situation for him, despite having some Formula 1 experience. Not what he has been racing seriously for the last few years, but an impressive performance. What have you seen out of him, Adam, that has worked for Scott so far this race?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I haven't really followed.
I think Scott's been good at just being smooth. He doesn't seem to be pushing the car as hard as some of these other guys are. I think that he's just concentrating on putting in the laps, being nice and smooth with the inputs, and it's paying off. Where he's been very consistent in terms of his lap times, lap after lap.
Yeah, so Will Power's in-lap was a second faster than Scott Speed's in-lap, and his out-lap was, including the pit stop, was roughly 0.6 quicker. So he made up 1.6 seconds in just those.
But the reason he was behind him is because he's been inconsistent this whole race. If Power can become more consistent as the race goes on, we might see him starting to close on Felix and Sage at the front.
He did close by a few tenths since coming out of the pit lane, I think. He's been slowly trying to close in on Felix Rosenquist. But something just to consider, Team Penske, a big organization, and not having any real racing going on with 4 drivers entered in this race. Maybe they're throwing some of their engineering resources at planning out the perfect pit strategy. Maybe something that Scott Speed, not having a regular IndyCar crew, something they may struggle with a little bit more.
Actually, as far as Scott Speed's pace, one thing I'm noticing too is that he is one of the more experienced iRacers on here. Will Power is very experienced as well, but he doesn't have a lot to unlearn about the IndyCar. There are slight differences between, obviously, the physical model of the IndyCar and iRacing and in real life. So, I mean, obviously these guys are professionals, they adapt very well, but Scott, I don't think, is overburdened with those biases from experiences in these cars in real life. So I think that's helped him do as well as he has so far.
I think we have an incident further back in the field. I think Alex Palou, I think he is...
Dalton Kellett. Dalton Kellett got hit by Scott Beach going through the bus. Oh, he lost it. He lost it on his own, and then Beach had nowhere to go.
So 2 separate incidents then. Alex Palou losing it by himself in the bus stop, taking a bit too much curb. We're going to take a look at this incident now between Zach Veach and Dalton Kellett. You can see Dalton Kellett just losing the rear going through the bus stop, and like Andrew was saying, nowhere for Zach Veach to go. He did miss a pass here. Connor Daly working his way back through the field right now, taking the position away from Jimmy Johnson. Connor Daly, one of those cars who did not put in a qualifying time. His best lap, almost 3 seconds slower than Sage Karam, but being consistent and being able to stay in 14th position right now.
And Pagenaud's back on his way through the field too. He's like lapping half a second faster than Askew in front. Although he is going to have to make 2 stops still compared to Askew's 1. So still a long way to go for Simon.
Simon Pagenaud did come in on lap 6 for that big incident that took out 3 Team Penske cars. A good recovery so far to be in 6th position. Still got 25 laps left in this race.
Keeping an eye on Will Power's lap times here, because I think it takes about a lap or so to get the speeds up. And he was about 3/10 down that last lap. Let's see as he comes across. While maintaining speed, he improved a tenth over his best.
He was 3/10 faster than Sage last time around.
And just talking about the two drivers out front, Sage Cameron, Felix Rosenquist being a bit quiet the entire race. Felix Rosenquist has closed that gap. He was a little bit, he had lost a bit of time in that pit strategy, 3.7 seconds behind at one point. I saw him as close as 2.6 a few corners ago.
Actually, it looks like Sage had to get around Philippe Nasser, so that's going to bring him back just a little bit. Felix is going to have to get around Nasser as well, so we'll see if that equalizes after they have it. Sage is coming up to lap Connor. He'll be up on Connor's tail end of the lap.
And Power also has to get around Jimmy Johnson pretty soon.
So just something that maybe they are used to in the real life as well. What is the type of etiquette? You know, in F1 you have the blue flag where, you know, within 3 corners you got to get out of the way, but in IndyCar, what do we expect some of these drivers to be doing when they see their competitors coming to put them a lap down?
I mean, technically in the real world, there's no blue flag rule that forces you to get out of the way, but most of the time, especially on a road course, the etiquette is to sort of let the faster cars through, although you do see it often where, you know, a team car will let their teammate through quite easily, and then maybe, you know, a rival car through a little bit more, make them work a little bit more, so that might be something to look out for.
Yeah, with this race too, there's no yellow flag, so the incentive to try to battle a car coming up to lap you is a little bit less, as you're just going to lose a little bit of time as you go through the lap. So that's something to look for as Sage comes up the inside. Looks like he has it pretty clean.
Of course, Sage and Felix have no teammates in this race, while Will Power has 3 teammates in this race.
Sorry to correct you, Adam. Felix Rosenquist technically does have Marcus Ericsson, who's currently in 20th position. But Sage Karam now has 2 cars in between him and Felix Rosenquist with a 3.6 second gap. I think Sage may have used a little bit of push to pass there to draft past some of these guys and gain some time, in fact. So I don't think he lost any time making that pass on Connor Daly.
I think Power has a little bit of front wing damage here.
Go and take a look.
Yeah.
Not sure when that happened, but it looks like it's very slight, but it's definitely going to be costing him a little bit of speed.
I think I can see it on the left-hand side of that front wing, a little bit raised, a little bit dented.
He got it exiting the carousel on lap 19, went over the grass a little bit and the curb, and just got it a little.
If you do run a bit wide exiting the carousel, you can jump over those curves and take a little bit of damage, and that is exactly what has happened to Will Power, but does not appear to be affecting his lap times, still doing a 26.3 last time around.
Scott Speed's out.
Oh no, Scott Speed's crashed! Let's go take a look at the incident. Coming around the exit of the boot. I believe we know what we're going to see here. The rear end coming around. And unfortunately, straight into the wall. Scott Speed running a great race up in 4th. That might be race over for the rallycross driver.
That's a real shame for Scott Speed because he was running a great race.
Scott has left the building, so.
Yeah, there's a weird transition there going from the inside of that corner to corner exit between where the concrete patch and the asphalt is. And if you have too much wheel in it, too much throttle, it just, you know, it'll just spin on you really easily. So really easy to do.
Yeah, so Scott has in fact exited the sim, so he is not going to be taking the fast repair that is available to him. Other drivers currently out of the race and out of the sim: Colton Herta, Sebastian Bourdais, and Tony Kanaan. James Hinchcliffe, due to some connection issues, never started the race.
Well, Tony Kanaan got removed from the server. So.
So I believe that does mean that we now have 5 cars that will be out of this race. Very disappointing for Scott Speed. I know he had done a lot of preparation in the build-up to this event, and was putting on a good performance.
Philippe Nasser not doing Felix Rosenquist any favors right now. So only a couple laps, and Felix has dropped about a second gained on Sage there. So we'll see what happens once he can clear Nasser and see if he can run down Sage.
Nasser has been fast, but as I say that, he makes a mistake through the bus stop and lets Felix go through. Nasser had been fast, but he'd also been mistake prone in practice. So I think that what you're seeing is he really wants to be up there with these guys, but something happened earlier in the race and he just couldn't.
And obviously, Felipe Nasser, former F1 driver, was going to be doing some IndyCar races this season with Carlin, but unfortunately, the current situation has left him in a little bit of an unknown situation. Hopefully, when we do get racing later in the season, we do resume racing, he will be able to get out on track a little bit, but good to see him here in the virtual world at least.
Worst case, he has a full-time IMSA ride, so I'm sure he's not too bothered.
Actually, you bring up a good point, Adam. What's going to happen when we have all of these leagues that have such compressed schedules? Maybe some of these drivers who do two programs, I think Sebastian Bourdais, for example, used to be a dual program with Ford, for example. They're going to maybe have to prioritize which races they want to take part in.
Yeah, I think that's going to affect Hinchcliffe too. I think he's probably still good at the moment for the races he's signed up for with the 29 Andretti car and Genesis sponsorship. But as far as I understand too, some of the hiccups with him being able to do some of the other races like Toronto, which was not possible because the crew used to run his car has commitments in other series in the Andretti organization. So we'll see. I don't know, hopefully once this thing gets going again, we'll see that come back, but that was something I've been randomly thinking about the last couple days.
And obviously we don't want to downplay the seriousness of the situation. Obviously, the world's struggling to, in these times with coronavirus, but at least we're able to get online here and all take part as our one large sim racing community. As I think Jimmy Johnson, we were just talking about him having a clean race. I believe he's just crashed. Take a look at the incident. And another incident.
That looks okay.
Does look like another incident coming out of the boot, though.
Definitely the trickiest corner on the track. It's off camber, just as you want to be turning in. There's the crest in the track. It's one of the toughest corners in sim racing, in all honesty.
And you can see he just got. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
So I'd be really curious to see how that compares. I'm going to hear from these guys the difficulty of that corner coming out of the boot in real life compared to how it is in the sim, because it is deadly here in iRacing.
I was watching some of the onboards from 2017 the other day, and it looked like it was similarly treacherous. I mean, Rahal through there in practice and qualifying was getting pretty crossed up. A lot of steering input to wrestle the car through there.
That's one thing I do notice too in the sim versus real life. Obviously, I've never been in an IndyCar before, but for me at least, the one thing about the difference between, like, say, karting and this is you don't get that seat of the pants feel. You have a lot of trouble feeling what those rear wheels are doing. We make up for it in other ways in the sim, but I feel like that's one of those corners where being in tune with, the back end of your car stepping out is much more of a hindrance here on the sim than it would be in real life.
Sorry guys, we got a good battle going on for 8th and 9th between Pato O'Ward and Simon Pagenaud. Pagenaud has really closed up on O'Ward, and they've been basically matching lap times the last few laps.
As we ride on board with the nose cam from Simon Pagenaud, you could see Pato O'Ward running a little wide out of turn 1, but not compromising his run too much. Simon Pagenaud is going to reach almost 300 kilometers an hour as they come towards the bus stop. Unfortunately, it's a bit too tough to really make the outside move work here.
This is a legitimate fight for position. Pagenaud's already made 2 stops, but he's still got 1 stop to make. A shorter fill time, though, so he will be able to make up quite a bit of time in pit stop.
Yeah, looking at the lap times, it looks like Pagenaud in clean air is running about a second faster than O'Ward right now, so he's looking to clear him in a hurry and start making some moves forward. He's got about, they're about 10 seconds behind Harold for the 7th position.
So just some information for our viewers. 3 cars currently have just crashed. Marcus Ericsson, Dalton Kellett, and Zach Feast. I believe Dalton Kellett, they're all 3 still running, but all 3 cars have been struggling so far today. We're not going to go take a look at those incidents. We're going to stay on board because Pato O'Ward struggling coming out of the boot, and Simon Pagenaud still looking for a way past.
It is very interesting how different the styles of O'Ward and Pagenaud seem to be. Pagenaud is very good in the lower traction corners of the boot, but he's not quite good enough through turn 1 to really get the run that he needs to get by him into the bus stop.
The other thing to note here is, in real life, obviously everything's open setup, so the drivers can tailor the setup a lot more to their liking. I know Pagenaud is one of the drivers that's really specific about what he likes from the car, and that probably hurts him a little bit more here to have a fixed setup than some of these other guys.
And while Simon Pagenaud continues to struggle to find a way past Pato O'Ward, Joseph Newgarden taking full advantage to close in on this battle. He was at one point almost 8 seconds behind Simon Pagenaud. That gap very, very close now, 4 seconds, and unless Simon Pagenaud is able to find a way past, he is definitely losing time every single lap right now.
I think if Pagenaud can get by, he could potentially get all the way up to 6th by the end of the race with the shorter fill time, and he has like half a second more raw pace, I think, than O'Ward, Kirkwood, and Ferrucci. So, and Newgarden.
Speaking of Ferrucci, wasn't the last time we talked about him in 11th place? Well, he's kept it clean, and he's now up to 6th.
I think you're right. Last time was at the edge of the top 10, but currently sitting in 6th, up 15 positions. On strategy, he's looking pretty good. Like I think Adam was saying, Simon Pagenaud may be the one driver a little bit alternate strategy who could challenge him. But he's sitting here kind of leading this next group. We've got 3 distinct groups. We've got the leading 3, then Oliver Askew and Scott McLaughlin, about 30 seconds separated from your leader. And then you've got this little group here about a minute back. As we see Jimmy Johnson parked on the inside as Santino Ferrucci continues his solid run today.
And up front, it looks like Rosenquist is just not able to be quite as consistent as Sage, especially not as efficient getting around lap cars. So Sage has very slowly built out this gap to 3.5.
As I pointed to, Pato O'Ward, now that Pagenaud has been pressuring him, has upped his game quite a bit. He's lapping about half a second, 3/4 of a second faster than he has been the entire race. So
it also helps you repair that car that, remember, was very, very damaged at one point.
Yes, he was well off the pace in the first stint, and coming into the last few laps, he was looking at the high 27s. Now he's down 27.1 last lap. Let's see what he does when he comes across the line.
I think a lot of drivers who did take damage in that early portion of the race showing good pace right now. Scott McLaughlin, one of them. Last lap at 26.59. That's his fastest lap of the race. It's only half a second off the fastest lap of your race leader, so showing some good pace. Coming back with that damage.
Pagenaud got very loose in turn 1. Nearly lost him, but he was able to save it. Great parking.
Did save it, but he's fallen a little bit back now. Still in the drop, Pato O'Ward, and still struggling to make his way by. As we see
Should
Joseph
be coming up on pit stops at the end of this lap is lap 30, nearing basically the second pit stop.
We will take a look at your leaders and see if they do come down pit lane, but you can see at the back of the shot, Joseph Newgarden continuing to chip away. Gap under 4 seconds and slowly coming down. I think Felix Rosenquist just got held up a little bit by Kyle Kaiser there. Kyle Kaiser, not much he can do if you're getting past in the bus stop. You can't really go too far offline there.
Yeah, that was just an unfortunate place to catch Kyle Kaiser. Nothing that you really have to do about that, but it's going to cost Rosenquist a couple of times.
O'Ward makes a mistake.
Oh, Scott.
Pagenaud was just able to slip by O'Ward. O'Ward went wide at turn 8.
We'll go take a look at that pass, but we also see Scott McLaughlin. He's in the pit lane right now. First car coming in on lap 30. And you can see Pato O'Ward just running a little wide under braking and Simon Pagenaud slipping down the inside. Your leader, Sage Karam, though, as he comes around to complete the 30th lap of this race, still staying out, able to extend this stint maybe 1 lap more than the previous one. And something I wanted to ask you, Brian. So we were talking about Felix Rosenquist maybe struggling a bit in traffic. Do you think that Sage's virtual experience and knowing a little bit more of what to expect when he gets to some of these slower cars, we call it Indy multi-class traffic in the official racing, does he maybe have a little bit more experience that's going to be able to benefit him here?
Actually, just watching the two of them there, you would think so, but Felix is handling it relatively well. Even Kyle Kaiser there, they went through the bus stop together. He did lose a little bit of time, but he was very efficient in his pass. He didn't go too offline. Obviously, it wasn't a good break for Felix, but I feel like he's handling it as well as anyone out there. Closed up a little bit on Sage that last lap. He's been moving quick, but is it a hindrance to him right now? I mean, Sage has been the first one there, so he's just been steady all race. So I don't think it's so much a traffic thing. His sim experience is he's steady, and he's steady fast right now. So that's the biggest thing.
And how much was Pato O'Ward holding up Simon Pagenaud? Well, Pagenaud put over a second on him in just over a lap now. So I think that it's safe to say that Pagenaud has finally been released and will be looking to hunt down Scott McLaughlin, Santino Ferrucci, and the rest of them in front of him. We might be looking at a charge from the Frenchman.
P1 and 2 in the pits.
And as Simon Pagenaud's got a little bit longer left in the stint, but your leaders, Sage Karam and Felix Rosenqvist, down into pit lane. Will Power currently out for one more lap. We're going to see if anything changes in this lead here. It looks like Felix Rosenqvist a little bit tentative into his box.
Now, just for reference too, Will Power was roughly 10 seconds behind Sage before this round of pit stops. I'm guessing he's going to go at least a couple laps longer here. Get a good short fill, and let's see how much he can close the gap.
Power is coming up behind Kyle Kaiser here. Will Kaiser be able to let him go a little bit easier? Will that front wing damage cause him a little bit more heartache because of the extra push that he's getting through these corners?
Oh, he's going to have 5 seconds more in the pit stop at least, I think, too. So
If they have fast repairs, he won't.
that's a good
And
point.
Will Power should have a fast repair that should be able to take care of that wing for him.
Remember,
Yeah, it
all,
did look like he pushed wide a little bit turn 6 and turn 7 because of the aero wash, so he's definitely not getting any favors from Kyle.
Kyle getting out of the way from him as they're coming out of the boot, but he definitely got held up a fair bit on that lap. Not ideal for Will Power.
and like we were just discussing, remember all these drivers will have 2 fast repairs. I think Will Power, here he comes down onto pit lane.
And Kyle Kaiser not making himself any friends out there for he's able to get back into a real program, that's for sure.
Maybe he will join the newly formed Yunkos esports racing team. I think that's what they're called. Planning on competing in iRacing more seriously. But Will Power, let's see.
Karam already coming down and by him as Will Power still up on the jet.
Yeah, Power was 10 seconds behind before the pit stop sequence. So.
Felix Rosenqvist actually, despite what I said about maybe being a bit tentative into the box, the gap closing a little bit in that pit cycle. Felix is now only 3 seconds behind Sage Karam, and with 12 laps to go, it's anyone's game here.
Marcus Ericsson unfortunately has a connection issue and has been booted from the server.
It is unfortunate.
Something you do not see in real life, just being removed from the universe, but in sim racing, that is something that does and can happen.
Well, it happens through mechanical failures, I guess you would say.
Yeah, but
Looks
not
like-
like the rapture sort of thing that happens when you get just automatically removed from the server.
Ferrucci has gone long again, so that should be 2 extra laps to go on the final stint and potentially get a little bit fresher tires as Simon Pagenaud tries to hunt him.
Of course, Pagenaud's going even deeper, though, because he's on this alternative strategy. He's only
That is
10
true.
laps into his run, right? Same with Newgard.
And alternative strategy is a new word we use for being involved in a big crash.
As we saw a little incident in the background there, Zach Veach not having the best of days. He's currently 4
Now he's
laps
beached
down.
on the curb.
Veach is beached. He's 4 laps down, not being a great race for him in any way, shape, or form. He's not looked good since the start. I think he was involved in some incidents. And he'll be hoping that next week, when we go to Barber Motorsports Park, he'll be hoping for a slightly more impressive showing.
An even
By the way-
trickier track, though.
By the way, Beach is Beached is a Powerslide Motorsports trademark, so any marketing opportunities that come from said phrase lie with us and us alone.
We'll have
Kyle
T-shirts
Kynes
available
was
for
back
sale
in the
very
pits
soon.
with front wing damage, guys. He spun coming out of pit road.
And Jimmy Johnson going to have to come back into the pits because he has a mangled car.
I think I just noticed something, guys. I think Alex Palou, despite all the drama that he's had in the race, first coming down pit lane twice in just a few laps, and then having that big incident, he's been fighting his way back. Still needs to pit, but up in 12th. Now
Yeah,
taking...
Jimmy Johnson's car is not going straight anymore.
Let's go ahead and actually ride on board with Jimmy Johnson. Just to see how much he's right now struggling with the amount of damage he's got. You can see just how slow he's having to go around these corners. Fortunately, no one is anywhere near him, so he's not holding up anyone on track.
You know what? The man's a 7-time NASCAR champion. We'll let him bend a few virtual Indy cars.
And I think it's fair to say we'd all like to see him racing a real IndyCar at some point. Maybe this year, as has been speculated.
I think all the IndyCar dates clash with NASCAR dates this year, so might be 2021.
Well, he may decide, if it's a truncated NASCAR calendar this year, he may decide to extend his...
Going very slowly on the back. Sorry, there was a tight moment there between Rosenquist, Graham Rahal, and Marcus Ericsson. Marcus Ericsson slowed down extremely abruptly before the bus stop to let them go, and that was just while Felix and Graham were side by side. It easily ended in tears there.
Maybe Marcus, with his connection issues, just thinking that the better thing for him to do would be to move out of the way. Glad to see him back in the race despite those connection issues. As we take a look at his Husky-powered IndyCar. I've heard a lot about Husky, but I've never actually seen it on shelves. It sounds a lot like Rich Energy, if I'm going to say anything about it.
Will getting a little squirrely coming out of the booth there. Lost it just a little bit of time.
So our three drivers out front kind of at a stalemate right now. Felix Rosenquist has been slowly inching closer towards Sage Karam. It has not shown the pace at this race yet to show us that he's really going to be able to make a charge to the finish. Will Power has been slowly slipping back since the pit stops, unfortunately. He did get that front wing damage repaired, but not showing the same kind of pace. He was almost 1.5 seconds slower than the guys in front of him that lap around, even with the traffic he had to face.
I think the main thing is going to be where do Pagenaud and Newgarden come out in relation to Ferrucci and Kirk whenever they pit.
Another interesting battle to take a look at, actually. Scott McLaughlin, he might be able to go to the finish from lap 29. It is going to require a little bit of fuel saving, but he's only 3 seconds behind Oliver Askew. And I think Scott McLaughlin has definitely shown the pace this entire race, to be able to catch and pass Oliver before we get to the end.
I just think it's amazing that we are watching basically Scott McLaughlin's IndyCar debut, in a way, on iRacing today. It's a pretty cool event that we're witnessing.
I think we can lay claim to the fact that this is his first ever official competitive IndyCar race. And who knows, he may do a few more before he actually gets to sit and race the real one. Obviously Barber next week. And I think we've got a few more fan votes coming up. You can vote on IndyCar social media in a bracket style vote to pick the next track. And I think there might also be a driver's choice. It'll be very interesting to see what type of tracks they pick. Andrew, if you were...
no more fan votes, but it is Barber next, and then there is a driver's choice as well. And then a non-IndyCar green track as well.
So Andrew, if you were going to pick a track to race at, which one would you pick it?
A non-IndyCar right now?
Does it have to be a non-IndyCar track, the driver's choice?
Well, so if we're going the driver's choice, I mean, the obvious one to pick is Indy. You gotta get these cars. If we're gonna do a virtual series, how can we do it with the 500? But if we're gonna go to a road course, of course, I would go with Spa. I think that these cars would be perfect there. Wide open, lots of long straights, and lots of runoff areas. They might get a lot of off tracks, but hey, these aren't official races, so off tracks don't really matter.
And we've seen in the past, for example, like the Circuit of the Americas, IndyCar does not mind changing the track limits to suit the cars a little better, so that might be an interesting one to pick. How about you, Brian? What would be your dream track to race this car at?
Well, Andrew took mine. Spa is my favorite circuit track in the world right now. The Nürburgring is something I'm going to be racing in the IndyCar official series. I wouldn't suggest it for these guys. That'd be interesting in a technical sense, but not viewing. So if I can't have Spa, then probably Suzuka would be the one that I'd like to see.
Suzuka would be very interesting with these cars. Increased weight would drive very differently from an F1 car. How about you, Adam, though? So we've got 2 F1 style tracks. What are you going to pick next?
I think if I had to choose an oval, I would choose Milwaukee. Flat, 1 mile oval. It's classic IndyCar track. If I had to go for a road course, I'd probably go for one of the American circuits, like maybe VIR or Road Atlanta, something that, you know, with not a lot of runoff, punishes mistakes, but you could still see a lot of good races.
I think both VIR and Road Atlanta would make for very interesting racing, but might also make for a little bit of a crash fest, unfortunately, as we see Oliver Askew trying to get past, I think that's Connor Daly right now, as Scott McLaughlin continues to hunt him down. The gap now down to 1.5 seconds.
Power, on the other hand, is falling off the back just a little bit. He's been a little bit slow the last few laps. I wonder if the strategy isn't quite working out the way he hoped.
And talking a bit more about strategy, Santino Ferrucci coming around turn 1 now. Joseph Newgarden just exiting the pit on his last stop. He's come out about 3 or 4 seconds behind Santino Ferrucci. And Simon Pagenaud, 1 more lap, I think, and he will be in. I think he's going to come out around where Joseph Newgarden has come out. So we're going to have a little bit of a 6-lap shootout, I think, between Simon Pagenaud, who's shown great pace, and Santino Ferrucci.
And Newgarden did jump Kirkwood. Newgarden and Pagenaud were behind Kirkwood before this round of stop.
Joseph Newgarden, Team Penske driver involved in a big incident at the start of the race, now back up into 8th position, and having completed his last pit stop, he's just going to be looking forward towards the driver of Santino Ferrucci. As Simon Pagenaud does indeed make his way down onto pit lane. I'm not sure, guys. I think he may have had some damage. Maybe you guys will be able to get a little bit of a clearer view, but as he does...
I don't see any.
Okay, that's the good news, but he would have a fast repair anyway. But as he comes down towards the pit lane, you can see on the track map, Santino Ferrucci coming around the second to last corner.
Oh, there's Alexander Rossi in behind him. Forgot that he was still running. Haven't seen him all day.
Alex Rossi, unfortunately, currently two laps down, running in 18th place, but making the pass on Santino Ferrucci.
And Pagenaud came out well in front of Ferrucci. So.
Simon Pagenaud 4 seconds in front of Santino Ferrucci right now. He's secured 6th position for this race, and he's just going to be looking to hold on to it. 6 laps to go. There's a big incident. I heard it. I don't see it, but I hear it. It's Alex Palou.
How many is that now?
I believe that might have been his 5th or 6th incident. Again, coming through the bus stop and just taking a little too much curve, rather. Andrew, just how deadly.
That was the incident that just kept on going, wasn't it?
That
Yeah,
was.
McLaughlin is really close to Askew now for 4.
Sorry, what was your question there, Jim?
No, I was just going to ask. I know that the league race that we did on Wednesday, the bugs were pretty deadly, but I don't remember seeing as many drivers dying in that race as I do today. It's been amazing how many of these top quality drivers are being caught out by the amount of bumpiness in these curves.
I think that's just a factor that they're just so used to feeling those bumps through their whole body, and all they're getting is feedback through their ears and through the whatever wheel they have. And there's a very large gap between the different setups that these guys have. Some of them are on G29, some of them are on like SimLab equipment and full motion rigs. So I think that it's really just a product of them not being able to have the experience to correct some of the things that we were able to correct on.
That was a really nice pass. He just committed to the outside of the bus stop and took the position.
Scott McLaughlin, the driver from Australia, making his competitive IndyCar
New
debut.
Zealand.
Sorry, I meant New Zealand. I said Australia. The driver from New Zealand, competitive IndyCar debut up into 4th, even after having so many, he had a big incident at the start of the race. Be back in 4th, 40 seconds behind the leader. He'll be pretty happy, given that he was losing almost 3 seconds a lap at one point with the amount of damage he had.
And Newgarden also just got by Peru.
That definitely looked like from McLaughlin that he was one of the guys who actually saved their push to passes, and he was able to use it to great effect. I doubt Askew had any push to pass to defend.
Also,
Yeah,
look,
There's McLaughlin putting his fastest lap of the race down the previous lap.
Askey's been in a lot of fights this race, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's used all of his push to pass.
and just taking a look at that pass from Joseph Newgarden on Santino Ferrucci, it did look as well. Joseph Newgarden using a push to pass to clear Santino Ferrucci before they even got to the bus stop this time around.
Do you think that Team Penske might have people in their ears telling them to save their push to pass, just like in real life?
I don't know, just maybe. You know, they've got drivers in 3rd, 4th, and 6th right now. And after having 3 of their 4 cars involved in serious incidents within the first 5 laps of the race, they're going to be pretty happy about this result.
Yeah, 4 cars in the top 7 then.
Do we have any indicators of if someone's on the push to pass in the current build of this IndyCar?
No.
Unfortunately not, and it's also just something to keep in mind. In the real IndyCar series, these drivers have 120 seconds of push to pass, which they can control on a second-by-second basis. For us in the series, in the virtual car, we get 10 push to passes. The second you lift or use the brake, you will lose that extra engine boost. So a little bit different strategy on the push to pass here, and maybe Team Penske, having so many more people at their disposal, have figured out the best way to manage and use these push to passes in the virtual car.
And to pull back the veil just a little bit, that is one thing that the real world IndyCar has that we don't, is that in all cases that I've talked to, they have an indicator saying, I'm being pushed to pass right now, and we don't. So that is a difference between the real world and ours.
Right on the rear of Scott McLaughlin right now, you can see just how much of the curve he's taking and how much is bumping some of the cars behind him as well. But Oliver Askew is not going to try and give up this position. He's trying to stick there. I just don't think he's got the kind of performance right now to really challenge the driver from New Zealand.
He has the raw pace, but he's just been making a bunch of mistakes this race.
Keep in mind that Oliver Askew is not only a rookie to iRacing, but he's also a rookie to IndyCar. He would have been making his IndyCar really his debut season with McLaren at St. Pete, and he was robbed of that chance and is making his debut here instead. So not only is Scott McLaughlin making a debut, but Oliver Askew really is too.
And while Scott might be the standout rookie from this race so far, Oliver Askew has had a pretty consistent and fast run so far. Being in good position in front of some of the names behind him, he's going to be pretty happy for his first ever competitive IndyCar race.
And Sage lost like almost half a second the last lap to Rosenquist, but most of that seemed to be Santino Ferrucci holding up Sage.
Sage is also approaching 2 guys who might not be getting out of his way in Joseph Newgarden and Alexander Rossi. Both of them are sort of going full bore right now and are engaging in a little bit of a battle, even though they're not on the same lap. I think that he might be in a little bit of trouble here coming into this final lap.
You can see the gap is being fairly consistent the last few laps. Has dropped by just a few tenths, but Sage Karam still able to maintain an almost 3-second buffer over Felix Rosenquist. As he comes across the line, there will be 2 more laps to go. Next time around will be the white flag. Really your biggest battle right now is this one between Scott McLaughlin and Oliver Askew for 4th and 5th.
I also imagine that someone like Joseph Newgarden is not really used to being lapped in an IndyCar, a reigning series champion and always in Penske equipment, essentially getting lapped by a part-time team in Brian Ryman.
Have to dig back into his Sarah Fisher days, and even then he was still seems very unlikely that he was lapped all that often back then.
Alexander Rossi getting out of Sage Karam's way. Will Newgarden do the same? There's less than a second between the two. I personally think that Newgarden will want to stay on the lead lap if at all possible.
I think Sage can afford to not get by him, and still he has enough gap where he's safe. And
Joseph Newgarden only half a second slower than Sage Karam on that last lap. Sage Karam is going to come around to take the white flag. And Newgarden having a 1.5 second buffer. I think Adam's right. I think he's going to try and hold on and finish as the last car on the lead lap. Sage Karam, he's led almost every lap of this race other than when he's had to come down into pit lane. He's going through the S's, looking to take, I think, what will be his first ever official IndyCar Series win.
well, no one's ever done an iRacing IndyCar race in this series.
Well, he'll not only be the first ever iRacing IndyCar Challenge winner, I think he'll be very happy to get his season, even if it's a virtual season, off to this kind of winning start. Adam, you finished just a few seconds behind Sage on Wednesday night. What have you seen from him today? Has he stepped up his performance even more?
I mean, I don't know. It seems pretty similar to what was happening on Wednesday. If anything, he's had a little bit less pressure than he had on Wednesday, to be honest. But yeah, just kind of out front cruising. Going to be comfortable 3-second gap at the end. So
Joseph Newgarden getting. Sorry.
Though he's really done a good job of staying with Karam. Maybe not right there, but very.
And like Andrew said, he has shown similar kind of lap times as Sage Karam, but Sage Karam comes across the line to take the win. Your first ever iRacing IndyCar Series champion. Felix Rosenqvist is going to come across the line in second. Sage Karam sets the fastest lap of a race with a 25.671 as he came across the line. Fantastic driving from Sage.
Power defeated.
And Power goes faster with a 6.23. Less than half. Oh, they're wrecking now because they can.
So Power clearly knows the iRacing tricks to save up your push pass for the last lap to get fastest lap.
Will Power doing donuts in a pile of smoking wreckage.
Clearly very happy to come home third. A little bit of a tough race for him. He slipped back at the start to fifth. We've still got some action going on a little further in the field.
But he was the only other driver remotely in touch with Felix and Sage.
Last few cars are still coming across to take the checkered flag. We're currently riding on with Dalton Kellett, right behind Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson in his Ally Bank powered or sponsored IndyCar. Still got some cars doing donuts in turn one, I'm pretty sure. That will be it. Everyone officially across the line. Let's take a look at your race results. Sage Karam, the driver for Dreyer and Rainbolt, will win this 45-lap shootout at Watkins Glen. Coming in second, over 3.5 seconds behind from Chip Ganassi Racing, Felix Rosenqvist. You then have the two Team Penske drivers, Will Power and Scott McLaughlin, making his first ever competitive IndyCar start. Oliver Askew from the Arrow McLaren team also making his debut. Very happy to come back in fifth. You have the other two Team Penske drivers, Simon Pagenaud and Joseph Newgarden, coming at the end of the lead lap. Only 7 cars finishing on the lead lap here. Behind them, Santino Ferrucci, Kyle Kirkwood, Connor Daly, Dalton Kellett, Kyle Kaiser, Pato Award, Graham Rahal, Felipe Nazar, Jimmy Johnson, Alexander Rossi, Marcus Ericsson, Zach Veach, Alex Palou, who after having a great start to the race, unfortunately struggled. And Scott Speed, again, one car running as high as third at one point and spinning and crashing. Then you've got Colton Herta, Sebastian Bourdais, Tony Kanaan, and James Hinchcliffe, unfortunately, due to connection issues, not making the race start. As we watch Sage Karam doing his donuts, just want to ask...
Some tight donuts there.
Yeah, doing some good donuts, but I want to ask each of you guys to just quickly review what we saw. The first ever iRacing IndyCar Challenge race. We saw some good fighting, I think, up and down the field. What are you guys expecting now going into Barber next week?
Well, I think that with these guys getting a taste of it now, they've experienced a full race. It's been broadcast. We've got fans out there, hopefully tuning in, hopefully to our channel, but through IndyCar.com and the broadcasted races there. That these guys are okay. You know what? We've set this down. We've got a few more of these to go, and I'm only hoping for better things as we go forward.
Adam, what did you think? You've obviously raced this car and track a lot. How do you think these real-life drivers got on today?
I think a lot of them are glad that there were fast repairs available because there was definitely a lot of carnage. But as we've documented, that's kind of expected. They're not really used to the sim physics. But yeah, I think as they get more used to it, it'll become more competitive. I'll definitely look for Will Power to be even stronger next round at Barber. That's normally a track that he's done really well at in real life. So hopefully he can take the fight to Sage and Felix next round.
And Andrew, you obviously were instrumental in helping some of these drivers get up to speed, helped build the setup, and coaching these drivers. What did you think? What did you think about the show that we got to watch today?
I think it was a great show. I think that we saw some drivers that were very, very talented, especially the top three in the podium, putting on a great show, treating this really like a real world event. I think a lot of these guys, with the amount of preparation that they put in and the amount of practice that they put in, they were taking this very seriously. And I think it showed with all the racing and all the moves that we saw. There was some fantastic racing and some really brave, fantastic moves out there.
Absolutely, and I hope that everyone in the IndyCar community may not have watched on our channel, but watched the official stream. They really enjoyed this first ever IndyCar Challenge race, and we've got 5 more to look forward to, at least scheduled. Who knows what will happen in the long term? And hopefully, you guys will watch next week at Barber. Maybe we'll do this again. Maybe we won't. But thank you all for watching. Thank you, Andrew, Adam, and Brian, for joining me in the commentary booth. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.